I'll hand over to Sam, who's our
Evening.
evening. Sam, I gotta say you're our resident mortgage broker and all-round helper, really.
Yeah, well, I do my best.
So, for those who don't know, Sam's been an absolute star through this whole thing the last 18 months. So thank you. You know, I appreciate what you do, Sam. So thank you very much.
No, thanks very much. I apologise in advance. Across the Grand Union Canal, which runs by my flat, there's a what sounds like a very large Indian wedding going on. So I've had the pleasures of Bhangra all day, which has been nice to do client calls with. But I have closed the window, so if I start sweating, I apologise because it's hot in here. But at least you won't hear the music.
I thought you might have tried to get in there, Sam. And
well, I did say to the wife, "Is it all right if I take the afternoon off?" And she said no. So yeah,
it's a nice day as well.
I know. Perfect for a wedding. But there we go. My next door neighbour's been shouting at all afternoon. It's been quite funny, actually.
Oh my God.
But there we go. Right, let me just see if I can find my screen. Which one is it?
I'll just remind people, Sam, that you like your questions at the end, don't you? So we'll save our questions to the end of your presentation.
If poss, yeah. Just otherwise, I break my stride, and what happens is it ends up doing it takes me twice as long to do it, and as you know, I can whittle on anyway. So
you do well. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks, Chris. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, my name's Sam Norris. I am the owner and director of Grand Union Finance. Actually, this month is our 1-year anniversary, set up in June last year, to basically look after investors and developers and really sort of specialise in helping raise finance for those individuals. On the screen, you can see all the different methods of contacting me. Obviously, the traditional ways of phone and email. But if you are a bit more high tech and want to go and follow me on Instagram, you can. Also on Facebook and YouTube. I've got a channel where I post videos pretty regularly on various different subjects, and also on Twitter and TikTok and pretty much anything else you can think of that you can do social media on. So yeah, do look me up. But as always, we'll kick off by just doing a quick mortgage market update, a few little things to talk to you about on there, which are quite interesting. Then heading over and talking about bridging and development. I'm then going to talk about, in terms of actually financing, 3 ways that I've been talking to a lot of my clients about recently that to build your portfolio and basically how those would be financed. And then finishing up with a bit of a Q&A, as Chris said, at the end. So let's talk mortgages to start with. One question I get asked a lot is, should I buy my next property in a limited company or in personal name? And obviously there's lots of tax reasons why you might do one or the other, which I can't get into because I don't have the qualification. But one thing that may sway you one way or another is the cost of your mortgage, which people are quite surprised by the difference in. As you can see on the screen, there's quite a big difference at the moment. These are live figures that I got this morning. Of the cheapest 75% 2 and 5 year fixed rates for personal and limited company. Quite a big difference between the two. I was quite surprised recently when I had a chat with some friends of mine over at Birmingham Midshires, which obviously for those of you probably know, they're one of, if not the most well-known sort of specialist buy-to-let lender in the market. And they're part of the Lloyds Banking Group, but they don't do limited company mortgages. And I asked them why, and their simple answer was that actually, maybe this is just because we inhabit this part of the market, but they actually said that less than 10% of buy-to-let applications are actually done through limited companies still, even with all of the changes to tax legislation. So still a relatively small part of the market, which is probably the reason why there's such a massive difference in the rates. Now, one of the thing is, when you do start growing a portfolio, you're going to have to start using the lenders that will lend to limited companies, whether you're in personal or limited company name anyway, because a lot of the lenders, I mean, for example, the personal lender here is actually Santander, amazingly, cheapest buy-to-let lender on the market at the moment. But to be honest with you, they really only want to lend to those that are kind of accidental landlords, to be honest with you, 1 or 2 properties in the background max. They're not really keen on portfolio landlords or professionals. They won't be taking rental income into account. They'll have minimum income requirements. They'll be very, very tight with their criteria. So as you grow your portfolio, you will start to naturally gravitate towards the more specialist lenders anyway, which again is why quite a lot of my clients kind of start as they mean to go on and buy a limited company to start with, because otherwise they're then potentially transferring and they're going to end up, so any gain that they get, they're going to lose, within 3 or 4 properties anyway. So something to consider. There is quite a large difference still between the interest rates. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I need experience to get an HMO mortgage? Now, surprisingly, the answer to this is no. We recently did a mortgage for a client who was a homeowner, and they were buying a ready-made HMO. So this is not, so if you were buying an HMO that is currently a C3 sort of family unit, and you were converting it into a C4 HMO, we would use bridging for that, because lenders like to see that you have your license and your registration done either to coincide with completion or very shortly afterwards, which is usually very, very difficult to achieve. And of course, they don't like you switching classification either. They want you to be buying this and it to be C4. So this was a rare occurrence, actually, where one of my clients was actually buying a ready-made HMO. They were a homeowner, but they didn't have any experience at all with renting property out. We managed to get them a 2-year fixed rate mortgage at 3.24%. And I thought that was pretty darn good, to be quite honest with you. It's about, just for comparison, my Sean Connery impression, probably about 0.3% higher than the best in the market, maybe slightly more than that, but not too far off. So we actually did it on a 2-year because he was convinced that once he got his experience up, we'd be able to get cheaper in 2 years' time. I did warn him that rates were probably going to go up a little bit in that period. It's unlikely they're going to go too much further down, but he was insistent, it all worked, and we're good to go. So it is possible, if you're looking to become an HMO investor, to get an HMO mortgage with no rental experience whatsoever. We are short of lenders, but it just so happens that some of the lenders that offer pretty decent rates at the moment are amongst those lenders. So we're lucky. Another little tidbit that came out recently in the news was actually something that initially, when I saw it, was a little bit alarming, which was that overall, in month on month in April, gross mortgage lending actually went down. Now, if you share the same view as me, my first thought was, oh, does that mean the market is slowing? Does that mean that we might be reaching the peak of our market? I do think we might be getting to that stage, but not for this reason. The actual reason that I think this is, and a lot of commentators seem to agree with me, is that there seems to be a bit of a mad rush that went on in March, where people were desperately trying to get their deals done in time, or get their applications in with time to spare for the June deadline for stamp duty. And March was an incredibly busy month, one of the busiest months I've ever known. And so it's unsurprising that there's been a reduction in the overall value of mortgage loans going into April. However, when you read between the lines, or you read below the small print underneath, the physical number of mortgage approvals actually went up in the month of April. So don't be fooled by the fact that overall the value of mortgage lending has gone down slightly month on month for the last couple of months. Actually, the individual number of applications being approved is actually on the rise still. So what that says to me is you could look at that one of two ways. And as investors, it's probably good news. A, lenders are still really keen to lend because they are approving mortgages. The other side to that is, if the market is slowing a little bit and we are potentially starting to reach the top of our market, there's going to be opportunities coming up pretty soon. We tend to get, I've been through 2 cycles in my career, and I tend to find that there's about a 3-month period where there's this disparity between what vendors are willing to let a property go for and what people are likely to buy a property for. And we get this stalemate for a few months before one or the other sort of drops, and usually it's the vendor, because it means we're at the top of the market. So nothing too much to worry about if you've read this in the news. I still think we're incredibly buoyant as a mortgage market. There's only one lender currently that I can think of that has, I think, run out of cash, and that's Gatehouse. They're declining applications left, right, and centre at the moment. So if you were just about to go for an application with Gatehouse, think twice, because we're finding that they're declining a lot at the moment because I think they're running out of cash. But they are the minority. The vast majority of lenders have a ton of money to get out the door at the moment. So that's really good news for us. Bridging and development then. So we are finding pretty much across the board that lenders are really pushing the higher loan sizes. So as a brokerage and as an individual broker, before I even started Grand Union, I've never had a minimum loan size, and I don't think I ever will do, especially as an organisation, because I get a lot of kicks out of actually helping newbies to the market get on board with things. And I've been fortunate enough, actually, over the last, over a decade, to see so many of my clients that have started out as first-time landlords now, massively successful property investors and developers. And I get a bit of satisfaction in the fact that I've played a small part in that. So we do tend to do quite a lot of small bridges. I'd say that on average, our average bridge loan is probably around 200 grand, but that does include quite a lot of sub £100,000 loans. The market is definitely kind of tightening up, I'd say, in that department. And here's a really good example of that. So Roma have always been known as a bridging lender that looks after the little guy, as I call them. They're traditionally a small loan lender. They've recently changed their products or their criteria so that they actually have a separate pricing structure below 100,000 to above 100,000. And as I said, as a traditional small loan lender, it's actually pretty insane. I've asked them for two pretty much identical sets of terms recently, apart from one was slightly below 100,000 and one was above. The one above, I got 0.75 for. The one below, I got 1.15 per month for on a set of terms. And it didn't take me too long to find something considerably better than that. So my client was very happy. But the fact is that we were talking literally a difference of £15,000 on a gross loan, which is nothing really. But they're not the only ones. There's quite a few lenders that you would consider to be, smaller bridging lenders that were quite happy to go down to the smaller loan sizes. But now even have minimum loan sizes of 100,000. They won't even lend if the loan is less than 100,000. And there are some out there as well that only a few months ago would lend you 100, 150. Now, if it's under 250, they won't lend to you. So be wary that maybe some of the bridging lenders you have been using may no longer be available to you because they're changing their minimum loan sizes. As I said, pool of lenders for sub 100,000 loans is definitely shrinking. We have got a new lowest bridging interest rate on the market though, 0.43%. But before we all start celebrating and throwing balloons around or whatever, it's a word of caution. Whenever I see pretty much any kind of interest rate below about 0.65%, I'm pretty certain that they're going to be with relatively large institutional lenders that I tend to call those types of loans short-term finance rather than bridging. For me, bridging is quick. There's a multitude of different ways that bridging lenders can make sure that applications are done quickly. They're usually smaller lenders, a bit more agile, smaller teams. They do smaller quantities, so they charge a little bit more, but they get the job done and they do it in a nice, smooth way. And luckily, I know how these guys work, and we tend to help them out by making their life easier as well with pretty robust applications. However, the interest rate I've got on the screen there is actually with a large bank. And so, to be honest with you, their application process is all very automated. You've got to do a decision in principle, like you would with a mortgage application, that can take up to 48 hours just for them to swing that around. And as I said on the screen there, the whole application process will probably actually end up taking more than a slow mortgage application because of all the processes in place. For me, you've got to go and look for bridging that suits the needs or suits the strategy that you're going for. Don't just base it on price, because otherwise chances are you're likely to be burned. If somebody came to me and said, Sam, I'm buying a property at auction, I wouldn't even consider this product because there's no way in hell they're going to get it done in time. So don't be lured in by cheap bridging finance. There's a reason it's cheap. It's because they're usually big corporations who can go for the lower margins because they're doing volume, because they've got a process in place. When there's a process in place, we lose flexibility and we lose speed. So that's just something to consider. Now, something I've been talking to my clients a lot about recently is the various different ways to actually build a portfolio, and more importantly, from my perspective, what kind of finance products you would use to do so. And really, I split them into three categories, because those of you that do follow me online, you will know that I talk a lot about not going through the BRR method, buy, refurbish, refinance, using mortgages. But there is a way that you can do that, which I sort of sit in the middle of these three ways. So the first of these three ways that I talk about is the old tried and tested way. And by the way, this is not a bad method at all. I've got so many. In fact, I'd probably say that amongst my 5 or 6 most favorite clients, at least half of them probably have followed this method. This is like I said, the old tried and tested, save a 25% deposit and buy a turnkey property with a mortgage. 75%, bish, bash, bosh, move on to the next one. Chances are you're going to need it to be a homeowner to make this possible. There's very few lenders out there that will lend to a first-time buyer and a first-time investor. And you having a provable, I'm not even sure if that's how you spell provable, but hopefully you know what I'm saying. Having a provable income is absolutely vital. As a first-time investor, first-time buyer, if you don't have a provable income, and if you're not a homeowner, you are probably looking at somewhere around 8% as your mortgage rate. It'll be astronomical. But that's the tried and tested method, perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. And actually, one of those 5 clients that I mentioned to you, he does this all the time, and he probably still buys 3 or 4 properties a year because he's got he's got a business that he runs on the side, and all the profits he just pushes into buying property with. So if there is another way of you generating cash on the side, this is a great method. You don't need to get your hands dirty on a building site or worrying about bridging. Mm-hmm. There is, of course, on the other side, buy, refurbish, refinance. It's the buzzword at the moment. Chances are, because we're going to be using bridging, you'll need at least 30% deposit when we work in deducted interest and fees. Plus, of course, you're going to have looking out for legal fees, which tend to be a little bit higher. Plus, you've got to make a contribution to the lenders, legal costs, and the valuations tend to be a little bit more pricey as well. So a little bit more money needed up front. However, you refurbish the property, you're adding value, and then as soon as you finish, you can refinance based on the new open market value, recycling cash, rinse and repeat, essentially. You can which is the opposite of the sort of the popular thought process, refinance a property pre 6 months. And actually, the lender offering the cheapest mortgage, 2 years, pre 6 months ownership at the moment is 3.04%. Not too bad at all, to be honest with you. So a lot of the reasons why people try and hold out for 6 months is they think they're going to get much, much cheaper lending. The reality is they're probably not at the moment. It's not going to be that much different. So you've got to think about what you could do with that money in the 2 or 3 months that you're sitting there waiting to reach 6 months to refinance. So that's our sort of our other strategy. I've got a client that in 2019 bought 11 properties in a single year doing that. So it's a method of rapidly increasing your property portfolio. Then we have the hybrid, and this is something I'm doing more and more of. If I'm honest with you, a lot of people are scared with bridging, and I completely understand why. I'm not, because I do about 4 of them a week. But there's a lot of people out there that are not doing 4 of them a week. So it takes a lot of getting used to. And actually, there's no need to do it because they're not trying to build a portfolio in a year. They're quite happy to do it over a 5 to 10 year period. If you are doing that, this method probably will work better for you. It is a form of buy, refurbish, refinance because you are physically doing those 3 things. The only difference is you are buying using a mortgage instead of a bridge, but you've got to follow 2 rules in order to achieve this. The first one is the refurb has got to be light as you like, less than 4 to 6 weeks. If you don't, there is the potential that a lender or surveyor will give you a 0 valuation, which doesn't mean that the property is not worth anything. It's just not worth anything to the lender because it falls outside of their criteria. The other option is they might do what we call a retention of funds, which essentially means that they'll say that they're willing to lend you the money as long as you do a certain amount of the work first. Well, you're probably scratching your head thinking, well, how does that work? It doesn't, essentially. So that's as good as a decline. We then have to fall back on the buy, refurbish, refinance method and use a bridge in order to get the property purchased and refurbed to the level that the lender will require. So very light touch refurb needed. And then the other rule is you need to wait until the end of your fixed term in order to refinance. So usually on this, we'll go in for a minimum term, 2 years. There are one or two lenders out there that have got a 1 year fixed rate, but the rates are pretty high, to be honest, on that. So chances are we'll be going down the route of a 2 year fixed rate, but it can be done. It's the whole purpose of this hybrid is that we're still following this method of pulling money out or adding the value. We're just waiting a little bit of time to pull it out. But as your property portfolio grows, you will actually find that the growth is pretty exponential, because every single property you add to your portfolio, of course, you're adding income to your portfolio, so you're saving cash quicker as well. As long as you're not reliant on pulling that money out of your portfolio, you will see a tipping point where actually you end up making so much money on a quarterly basis that you probably are able to add another property to your portfolio. So I probably whittled on long enough. Happy to open it up to the floor. I'm sure Chris has got some really difficult questions. He's probably thinking all month, some really hard questions for me to answer.
I'll do my best, Sam. Thank you very much. That was really interesting, actually, as always. Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor first before I have got a couple of questions, actually, but
just trying to think of ways of making the questions harder, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think Melinda will start off, and she's always a good person to start with. Actually.
Nice, easy one, yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I'm going to be purely selfish here in my own circumstances and just whether it's going to go against me or not going forward. But selling my property, got minimal income, as you know, as we've discussed, as it stands at the moment, Sam. Is that going to put me in a really tricky position, or should I just focus on buying with cash and then looking to refinance further down the line when it comes to investment properties?
Yeah, it's if you can purchase cash, I think it's usually the best way of doing so, especially if the income is minimal and you're going to be selling your home. So technically, you're then not a homeowner. The thing is, when you're buying cash, what a lot of people don't think about is it buys you freedom. You don't have to fit within the parameters of the lender, and so when you don't have to worry about that, you're not thinking about, oh God, I've got to be a homeowner, otherwise I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to do that. You can do what you want with that property. So it will give you a lot of freedom. You probably will need to, if you do want to draw money out of it, probably wait around 6 months. A couple of things to consider would be, lenders don't like to refinance pre-6 months if you bought cash on the whole, if you're not a homeowner. And B, if you needed something short term, so say you bought that one particular property, then another opportunity came up, you didn't quite have enough cash for it. Bridging lenders on the whole need to wait until your ownership of that property you bought cash is showing up on land registry, which can at the moment take up to 6 months as well. So that's another thing that people don't consider. So you do sort of, I guess, you take an opportunity cost risk by buying in cash, because it means you might not be able to take advantage of other opportunities that come along. But the reality of it is, in your personal situation, Melinda, it's probably advisable in the short term. I think a lot of people get stuck in worrying about the short term, and realistically, property is a long-term game, isn't it? So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It might mean that we push back the time that we get to work together, but I'd rather give you the right advice, Melinda.
That's fine. I mean, I've still got to sort out, and now I'm in the process. I'll be back in touch with you again about my buy-to-let anyway, which needs remortgaging. So that in itself, the fact that I owe a buy-to-let already, again, is that a positive? Even though I wasn't a homeowner, I still own a property.
Absolutely. Home ownership, one of the reasons why buy-to-let lenders prefer you to be a homeowner, and they include your own residential property in that, is they're looking for experience. And if they can't get experience of being a landlord, they will want to see experience of being able to pay a mortgage. As simple as that.
It's not a problem.
So you are still a homeowner. It's just somebody else's home technically, because they're living it, not you. So that will help you out massively, and actually will mean that there are lenders out there that don't have a minimum income requirement. Don't confuse that with no income requirement. There still is, but it means that they're not going to be concerned with, oh, you've got to show £25,000 of income. I did a mortgage for a client recently where their income was £8,000. I wonder why that is. So, you know.
Well, it's been a bit tough the last couple of years.
Yeah, I could confirm that is not the reason. He's doing absolutely fine. He's doing fine. He's just got a very savvy accountant. So and we did a mortgage absolutely fine with that. You know, all the figures stacked up, rental calculator absolutely fine, all the other criteria points no problem at all. So yeah, we would just have to look at some of that. So perfectly feasible with a mortgage. A lack of income isn't a problem. If a lender needs to see provable income, they're probably still likely to need to see at least 2 years if you are self-employed, just as an FYI.
Okay, thank you. Great.
No worries.
Good questions, Melinda. And I also thought it's quite impressive of Sam to give an answer where he actually didn't make any, it wasn't actually good for his business, because he said, yeah, but buy cash. So.
Oh, I do this all the time. My right-hand girl, Ruby, whenever I'm in the office with her, if she doesn't say to me at least once during the day, are you trying to bankrupt our business? Then it's not a day in the office with Ruby. I probably need to think about that a little bit more. But no, I'd rather give people the right advice than think selfishly. We're not trying to do transactional stuff here. We're working with people long term, and I need you to be successful. Yeah,
I think that's a long-term strategy, Sam, because obviously there are short-term strategies as well.
100%, absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Doing a lot of those this week, yeah.
That's really good. Any other questions from anyone? Lisa's got a question, but Lisa's on mute.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
No, I'm in trouble.
Simple question. Well, maybe not. So you said about buying in a limited company. So how difficult, I mean, I've sent you a little private message and I will arrange a call with you next week, but how difficult is it to buy in a limited company and try and get an SA mortgage? Because I'm struggling. I have got one, but it's the arrangement fee is like astronomical. Or they want to know, this is what I can't get my head around. And so that what they want to know is they want a letter from some of these, want a letter from a letting agent showing that we can get income, high, low and medium nightly rates. And I said, but letting agents don't do serviced accommodation. It's like comparing chalk and cheese. And so my broker said, well, can you get some, a letter from somebody that's doing the same thing? Why would a competitor give me their rates? Right, okay, I know in the property industry it is a bit more, people are a bit more open and a bit more, they're a bit more sharey, but so we've really struggled, because I'm doing this mortgage, I've really struggled with this, and I've struggled with the cost of the setup, not so much the valuation and that sort of stuff. It's just the actual cost of the product is horrendous.
Fees at the moment are massive, as high as I've ever known them. Not just the lender's typical fee that you can add to the loan, which you think, yes, that's all well and good, but if you add it to the loan, you're paying interest on it. So
absolutely,
it's not the ideal. But also, I have seen a marked increase, even in the last 3 or 4 months, of lenders adding in like a non-refundable, some call it an admin fee, some call it a booking fee, that you need to pay on application. There's lenders that have been doing this for years and years and years, but it slowly seems to be coming into the mainstream. I'm getting like Kent Reliance doing it, and Foundation are doing it, and some of these lenders that Paragon have been doing it for years. They've been cheating people out of money for as long as they've been around. But these other lenders, they don't usually do it. And even some of them, if they have been doing it, they've had options where you might pay a slightly higher interest rate, but there's no fees. Trick for you: if there is a lender that has a product with no fees attached, so free legals, free valuation, no booking fee, but it's higher, apply for that one, and then once you've got your valuation back, to switch over to the other product and pay the fees. At least you know that the valuation's all right. So cheeky. I always get told off by lenders when I do that. I'm like, well, don't let me do it, and then I'll stop doing it. But there's nothing to say you're not allowed. So that is a little way around it in terms of getting guarantees. But yeah, the fee situation is, in my opinion, it is starting to ramp up a little bit, and I'm a bit concerned. But talking about SAs, easy out for that is most lenders, if you were to rent that property out on a standard AST, if that income supports their rental criteria, they'll lend to you.
Well, there's three things here. So there's what I found just through looking at it. So there's three things. So one of them wants to know that we've got income.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So it's like, like you said, someone's got a good accountant. I think we have.
Me too, don't worry.
So then there's the other one that wants the letting agent, or they want to know what we can earn on SA. And I do understand, and then you've got the third one that says, right, so basically if it was repossessed, could we rent it out on an AST and cover your mortgage? Fine. That to me makes the most sense.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. But I can prove what I've earned so we're trying to buy a 3-bedroom property. We are trying still. I can prove income for a 2-bedroom property that was still pretty good last year in the same area. Not as nice, it's not got parking, it's got all this different stuff, but I can still prove that that's what we achieved. Not interested. They just want a letter from a letting agent, and I'm like, I can't make, and I keep saying, can you not talk to them and just make them see that that letting agents don't know this? But I'm really struggling.
Let's remember that no one has ever said that lending and common sense can same sentence. So we need to be aware of that. But also, two things I'd say is, number one, mortgages for serviced accommodation, it's like the Wild West. It's where HMO was 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, the lenders can't even figure out what to call it. We've got Interbay calling it holiday let. We've got Masthaven calling it Airbnb. We've got Foundation calling it short let. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
So if they can't even decide what they're going to call it, God help us when it comes to criteria. So that is literally, it's different for every single lender. Also, the other thing to consider is SA is very different, in my opinion, to any other type of property investment, because effectively it's like running a hospitality business. And so for that side of it, it's much more suited to commercial lenders that understand this type of income, and they can work with that type of income a lot more, and they'll have the surveyors that can go and value these properties. So I'm not trying to say go for commercial lenders, but you probably will end up having a little bit more success. Unfortunately, you've got to pay the rates that they'll pay. I think we are headed in the right direction, if I'm honest, because even you go back 2 years, we're in a better place than we were then, and we've had.
So how much higher are we talking? How much higher for the commercial?
You're probably looking at about 4.5%, somewhere around.
Do you know what? They're not that different. Some of the ones I got quoted for, not that different.
Yeah.
I just want something stable.
Exactly. And I think the thing is again, we come back to this theme of short term versus long term. It isn't, if I'm literally going to hang my hat on something, I really don't think it's going to be forever. I do think SA will become more mainstream, especially because, look, we're heading for a staycation boom. You've got to be stupid to not realise that. It's going to happen. And what will happen is there's going to be a massive amount of lenders that aren't listening to my feedback that are going to kick themselves in 2 years' time when they realise that they had an amazing opportunity to carve up a market share. Interbay came out of this last lockdown as a commercial lender. They're owned by the same company as Kent Reliance, and they have gone, this is a great opportunity. And they are pushing it. I get an email every day about their holiday let product. I've not
heard of them.
Limited to 70%, but I think their interest rate is about 3.8%, something like that. But it is limited to 70%, so
But do you know what? You'll get that back. It's like
exactly. But for me, because they're doing it, so what happens with that lender? So the One Savings Bank, who own Precise, Interbay, and Kent Reliance, what they do is they test stuff out with Interbay as a commercial lender, and then if it looks good, it filters down to Kent Reliance and to Precise, and then they'll start producing much more cost-effective products for it. So I'm really hoping that this what they're trying to do is successful, because then we will see. And the thing is, if the likes of Precise and Kent Reliance start pushing out these products, what that will do is for the other sort of residential lenders like Foundation, who've typically historically been one of the front runners in this kind of thing, they're going to see that as, oh crap, we've got competition now, and it's the big boys. They're stepping up. They've then got to bring their levels up. You're then going to get the Paragons coming in and muscling in, and it's a knock-on effect. You have Precise do HMO mortgages now. They didn't do those a few years back. It's all because they've done so well at Interbay, and it's filtered down. Although, having said that, Interbay or One Savings Bank only bought Precise last year, but even so, or year before. But even so, that sort of stuff starts filtering down. So that the mortgage market, it takes ages to cotton on to property strategies, and trust me, I have conversations with lenders on a daily basis where I'm just feeding back to them constantly. You need to be looking at this. You need to be looking at this strategy. Social housing is another one. Long lease is another one. There's loads of strategies that the market desperately needs more lending options for, and unfortunately, there's too many brokers out there, in my opinion, that just sit on their hands and are just happy to plough through the transactions. Where I'm shouting and screaming from the rafters, saying, "Please, give me more options for my clients, please. I don't want to do them with the same lender every week."
This is what we need, and we need people that can sort of think outside the box. It's I get a bit struggling.
Welcome to my world, Lisa. This is day to day for me.
Yeah, I do get a bit frustrated, but I've so luckily I've put it all on hold for the moment for other reasons. But I will talk to you next week, and
happy to have a chat.
We'll see what we can sort out. But that'd be great. Thank you very much for your information.
So in relation. Very much in relation to that then, because I mean, I'm looking for SA property. So if I'm buying cash, I mean, in theory, then further a few months down the line or whatever, then I should be able to look at some of the suggestions.
See, that puts you in a slightly different category, which is actually really good, because you've got historic proof of the income that your property is generating, which again, is not really probably going to help you on in the residential part of the market, but certainly in the commercial part, they value properties that have a history of showing income, and they will be able to work on that. I think we might even get to a point in the next few years where commercial lenders are doing yield-based valuations on or income-based valuations on SA portfolios. Maybe not necessarily on individuals, but if you've got a portfolio and it's treated as a business, that I could see that happening. I can't see it in the short term because COVID's killing commercial valuations. Even commercial lenders don't like doing them at the moment. But I could see that certainly happening in the future, which I think will be really beneficial for those that are trying to grow their portfolios. Maybe it won't really matter for those that are just trying to consolidate, but certainly something I could see happen. So that puts you in a slightly different category, Melinda, which would be really helpful.
Right, thank you.
That would help us, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Really help us.
Yeah.
Like I said, Wild West at the moment, Lisa.
Yeah.
That's a good. So really good answers there, Sam. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Sam.
I was suspicious that you were providing long answers to stop me asking questions, actually.
I can't believe that you would have thought that.
My just very quickly, my points were Gatehouse I've never heard of. So the fact they've run out of cash was not major, I must admit.
Yeah. They are they're a lender that they deal with the overseas market a lot, and because I've got clients around the world, they were someone I was utilising. But yeah, they've let me down big style, and I've told them that in no uncertain terms.
and when you published the figures, which were really interesting, actually, sort of limited company versus personal ownership. It'd be interesting to see what Kevin says later on about that in terms of the advantages of having a limited company, but it looked like it was about 1.2% more just to hold it, just to have lending in a limited company. So you've got to be able to save that. So I suppose that will be Kevin's challenge to see that, what the answer is there.
Oh, I've absolutely no doubt that he will. I obviously, because I don't have the qualification, I can't comment on it, but I know that that for a lot of my clients, it makes a hell of a lot of sense to do it, because it's not just about interest rates. It's about a lot of other stuff, which, you know, Kevin's the man, he'll tell you all about that.
But then that makes me move on to the point that you said that less than 10% of all lending is in a limited company, and that was quite surprising as well. So
it shocked me. That was a conversation I only had a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But then it's because, you know, all of us that are on here, we're here for a reason, because we're involved in the property investment world. So limited company has been something that we've been dealing with for a long time, and we deal with on a day-to-day basis. You know, people outside of this, it's still a relatively new phenomenon. And realistically, up until probably 5 years ago, if you bought in a limited company, you had a few residential lenders you could go to, but you're pretty much limited to commercial lenders. So, you know, it's been a massive change in a relatively short space of time. But yeah, we're still only less than 10%. I think in the next probably 10 years that will double, I'd imagine. And then that's when we will probably see the likes of Birmingham Midshires joining the fray, and we probably will see a shortening of the gap between personal and limited company, because there will be the competition there.
Yeah, no, that's good. And my very last point was, on your first slide, you had your reviews, and one of them was either from your wife or your mum that said coolest mortgage broker. I just wondered, was it your wife or was it your mum? Which
one was that on?
So on your reviews, it said coolest mortgage broker. I couldn't let you get away with that one.
So yeah, that was. I was actually called that by, if any of you are familiar, but there's a group of property sources called Premium Property, and I was on their podcast, and I was told that if anything is ever in writing, that you can use it as fact. And so they wrote in the show notes of my episode that I was the coolest mortgage broker around. So I was like, as soon as I saw that, I thought, boom, I'm having that. So it wasn't me. It actually wasn't.
That was really mean, Chris, to say it was his mum or his wife.
Yeah, because out of all the people in the world, they're probably the least likely to do that.
No, fantastic reviews, Sam. Fantastic presentation as always. Really appreciate it. Lots of good learning, and the perspective you bring, and the facts you bring as well is really, really interesting. So that really helps us as investors.
Yeah, no, I'm happy.
So thank you very much.